I think it's obvious that I'm not exactly surrounded by many people, so there's not much that can distract me.
You're
Do
an
you,
awful.
I know, gee. There's no need for that. You're from Longford, so I mean, there's two sides to the tale here.
No, I know that's why I laughed.
Podcast.
Hello, and you're very welcome back to the podcast, the show where I have a new guest on each week. I want to thank Jazz Kane for coming on last week from Spin 103.8. And as you can see, my office, I guess, is much different for those of you who, well, actually, no, before the podcast went kind of visual, I was back up in Dublin. But from listening to the podcast, if you're a long time listener, you'll know that during COVID last year, certainly for the first two lockdowns, I was stuck in my car. And I'm not delighted to be back, but I am back. But I'm delighted for my guest who's joining me today. You might know her as Felispeaks, otherwise known as Felicia. Well, sorry, Felicia, otherwise known as Felispeaks, is your stage name. You're a spoken word artist, a performer, a playwright, a creative. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you, Podge. I'm really excited to be on the podcast. Now, honestly,
I'll tell
when
you
I
that.
first heard that name, I love your podcast name, the Podcast. Honestly, it's genius.
I mentioned last week at Jazz, who was on. There was a podcast in America, and they had the same name because, like, I think hodgepodge is a turn of phrase. I'm not.
Wait, I thought it
Yeah,
was British, actually.
it could be, but these Americans have a name called the podcast with, sorry, the hodgepodge with some whatever their names are, and then they reached out to me asking me to change my name. They were like, they don't
What?
like, it was a passive aggressive, like, we just don't think it suits your brand. And I was like, my name is Podge. Like, it could not be more fitting if I tried.
Wait, so these randomers basically hit you up to change your podcast name that happens to also be your name.
It happens to, yeah. And they tried to, I would, as I said last week, I would have, if they said, listen, our name is the hodgepodge, you know, it might be confusing, you know, we'd prefer if you didn't have the same name. At least they're honest. But like, to try and tell me it doesn't suit my
Yeah.
brand, it's like, that's like me saying, could you actually, if your platform's called Philly Speaks, I just don't think Philly really works. Maybe try something else, even though like the first half of your name is, you know, it just doesn't make sense.
No, that's some cheek. You know what they try to do? They try to like Jedi mind trick you, like manipulate you with their own stuff. Like they're the insecure bitches that came over and were like, we don't like that you're using your name.
And then it's just like, and then I kind of replied, being like, oh, that's unfortunately that is my name, but I'd love to do a collaboration. And they just never replied. They left me
Like,
unseen.
ooh, the threat. They're so automatically threatened. And you're in Little Old Ireland.
Little old Ireland. But Felicia, how are you? How are you getting on? I mean, like, you know, you work in the entertainment industry, the performing industry, and for you, I mean, just straight off the cuff, I don't know, you know, Rory O'Neill, Panty Bliss, he was on Virgin Media, I think it was 2 weeks ago, saying that like it's
Yeah.
mad how, because so many people said they've saved, you know, money, or you know, they find, I guess, a bit of comfort or peace in COVID and not working from home. But in your industry, I mean, it's the polar opposite. It's flipped upside down. And how you find it?
Yeah. My industry is weird. I think the larger part of my industry would be the entertainment industry or the performance arts. But even within that is niche, spoken word poet that writes plays and sometimes goes between theater and film and stage. So, and then also like how we met, doing corporate gigs or internal corporate shows and stuff like
Mm.
that. So it's always something. Going on at the moment, but overall in general with my industry it is awful, and like Rory O'Neill mentioned, it feels like um that like we're dispensable, like we're disposable, and that we're not, as integral to the community or to the country as they trotted us out to be. I don't know, I felt like there was a lot of shade from the government. It felt very
It's
felt very
they're
shady
like the
from the
guys who emailed me. That was the government like emailing you.
Yeah, they were like, "Oh, it's grand. You're the best." But it's like, where's my money, government?
Yeah.
But generally, it was really hard at the start. It felt like a lot of us didn't know what to do, what it meant. Our industry is already quite precarious already, and then on top of that, added layer of COVID and are we allowed to go outside and
Mm.
what COVID compliance looks like in each department is a nightmare. So it felt like a lot of us were thrown into this new world where we had to relearn so much in comparison to a lot of other industries. I'd say the corporate industry are chilling because you man just get to go home and do everything else on your laptop. Do you know what I mean? Whereas
I haven't wore a pair of jeans in God knows how long. It's either shorts or pajamas. I done multiple presentations with like the top half in like, you know, the
oh my
gear, and then the bottom half I'm in slippers, and like my pajamas are ripped, like they're ripped, so it's not even like nice pajamas. I kind of just look
God,
like
no, it's not the cute pajamas. It's always like my homeware stuff is always like these pair of black shorts that are covered in my dog's hair, like just how do I say, for lack of a better word, anyhow shorts. I call them my anyhow shorts. They're just
okay.
anyhow. They just look anyhow. But yeah, finding a lot of comfort being at home and working at home. But it's been equally as challenging as it has been comforting because
Mm.
it feels like okay, we're all in this together and we're all at home. But the challenges are because I'm an artist, I'm learning how to use a tripod and use a camera and swivel things properly, and making my assistant learn how to edit because it's not going to be me, you know. I have shit to do, you know. I'm just kind of keeping afloat with writing, and I think what's been really interesting more than anything else is that realizing I need a lot more stimuli. Yeah, I need a lot more stimulation for writing than I thought I did.
Mm.
I need to go outside. I need to go on these walks and do all these things in order to kind of refill where I'm drawing from. And that's been quite difficult actually, being able to refill when you can't really go out to do much. So that's probably the biggest challenge to my writing life. But everything else in general, in terms of like how often I get gigs or how employed I am, I'm exhausted actually, and I feel really awkward about telling people how busy I am, just basically because it's in the middle of a pandemic and everybody
Mm.
else is kind of like, I don't know. I feel like in their head they're like, oh yeah, whatever, busy. But yeah, I think I've just learned to make lemonade. And my lemonade really tastes nice. So I've learned to get these COVID lemons and just make lemonades and keep working and keep producing and keep being artistic. And it's kind of worked for me in a way because the more I do, the more other people think that, oh yeah, she can do this. And so I just get more people in my emails asking me to do things I've already done. um, so yeah, all in all, to give it a summary, being an artist in a pandemic is precarious, it's frightening, it's different, and sometimes a lot of us are actually a lot of us will not admit it, but a lot of us are overworked because of fear of
Mm.
what the pandemic will do to our pockets. So I know it's not just me because I've been speaking to a lot of artists and they all seem overworked. They're all doing way more than they should and they're all really tired. And I'm like, why is everybody so tired at home? And it's because most of all, we're all just kind of doing more than we should in a regular week because we're at home. And so people think you can handle more. But more than anything else, you're just kind of scared that if I don't take on this opportunity in the middle of a pandemic, what would be the next one that will come, you know?
Yeah, and it's like the lack of support that like, you be getting further government, and as you mentioned there, you're stretching yourself out because you don't know when you can no longer be stretched at all, and you'll have nothing to kind of do. Certainly for an income. I mean, I'm very grateful given the job that I have in, you know, marketing and in the corporate world, to still have that stable job, and even
Yeah.
like because your art is amazing, and it's so powerful, but a lot of it as well, it comes from the world around you and your experiences and your interaction with other people, doesn't it? So I can imagine how certainly difficult that might be when you're only allowed to do that within a 5 kilometer radius. And are you
Yep.
in Longford?
No. I moved out of that dump a long time ago.
Because five kilometers in Longford's probably just your own. There probably is no neighbours around that part.
Just walk down to the cathedral and come back.
That's it. Just wave at someone that you can see from across the bog or across the lake. It's like, how are you?
You had to bring up the bug. God damn it.
Do you know what the bog is like Longford's gold. That's
No, you're saying this and you're laughing, but this is serious.
Oh no, we have a now that I took that joke from someone else because I know I will get given out to if I don't give them credit, but I took that joke from someone else. But we have a museum in Clara dedicated to the bog. Like that's the height of tourism here in Ireland. And we have a bog walk. They built a walk just so you could walk along the bog. Like that's the height.
God, we have one of
Yeah, that's the height. They're like, what's an awfully nothing real.
Nothing. Just a bit of grass, a bit of cow.
If you're stuck during the winter, we definitely have turf there. That's about the height of it.
The turf is good for you, though. You know.
So you're up in Dublin, is it?
Yeah, I know. I live in Maynooth. I couldn't hack Dublin because Longford molded me. So when you grew up, I tell everybody this: when you grow up quite country, like Dublin is way too big. When you grow up like Irish country, New York will blow your brain. Like I remember the first time I went to New York, I didn't actively think for 5 days. My brain could not handle the amount of stimulation. I shut down. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. You know, when you go on an adventure, you're like, oh, I'm going to write this. I'm going to see all these stars and I'm going to walk down the boulevards and all this. And I'm going to write about this adventure. I'm going to wear a little beret and short skirts. No, my brain went shut down.
It's just 3 days of
It was 3 days of oh my god, that building is very tall.
It's mad though, isn't it? Because I spent a summer in New York and the very same concept, like you go there and it's like that stereotypical, you know, country girl that you'd see in all the American movies. And I know there's a lot of American films like this, they stereotype characters and it's not real, it's just a stereotype to pull a narrative. But you go there, I remember I stood there looking up and like people were jostling me and my bags were going everywhere and I couldn't see a cloud because it was all these buildings, and it genuinely, that's how it feels. And you're just like, is there a cow anywhere? Maybe a pig, you know, a chicken fillet roll, nothing.
Chicken fillet, dude. I had to make do on hot dogs. That was when I missed I was like, oh my god! Like after the 5th hot dog, you're like, you know what? I need a fillet roll. This is ridiculous.
See, my issue was the hot dogs were $1, so I had my 5th hot dog after about an hour of arriving. Like, I was like, oh, another one, yeah, another one.
It's crazy. So Dublin, I could not live in Dublin. I moved into Maynooth University for college, and I remember the best thing about Maynooth is that it comfortably sits between country and city. It's not quite nice, you know, but it's not quite like
such a dig. It's not nice. We wouldn't go that far. That's not.
I'm just calling out all the counties. I want all the smoke. No, I'm messing. But seriously, it's not quite nice, but it's not like Lucan. Do you know what I mean? It's not that close to the city. So you have like a comfortable space where you're like, during the summer, it was actually during the pandemic that I realized what Maynooth really was for the kind of space it was and kind of town. During the summer, like it just brought out all the bougie moms. Like, I was like, this is unbelievable. I did not know Maynooth was bougie. All the bougie moms, their sunglasses, their little wheelies, like all their badass kids. This Maynooth was covered in like toddlers and babies and moms. And it was such a vibe. Whenever somebody would, whenever we're in and out of lockdown and somebody would come and visit Maynooth and like, oh, I'm just gonna stay with you for 2 weeks. Whenever they go into the town, they'd be like, are you guys sure you're in a pandemic? I'm like, look, Maynooth is a vibe. They just all the restaurants started pushing all the tables. We were like this close to the tires on the road. All the restaurants were just making extra space. I felt like I was in Spain. It was
It's because all the
amazing.
students were gone as well, isn't it? It's because like
Exactly. Exactly. Whereas in the wintertime, it like has a really edgy emo vibe where all the students are just like hanging. They're just like they're like poles, just hang just hanging near everything, just walking in and around them to just get into the pub. But yeah, during the winter, it's a completely different energy, and I loved that dichotomy.
mm.
Menus could easily fluctuate between not no Longford, not
I
not
mean, I mean, sure.
we we have a good Tesco.
Oh, one, just the one. That's it. Nothing really else.
Really good Tesco. If I was to say anything about Longford, our Tesco is serious,
I mean, like, Tesco's a British company, so I don't even know if that's like. We have one really good thing. It's British, in the town, and we've a couple of we're not stuck for heat. So,
Oh no, 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 no. There's another thing. No, I
oh,
remembered
oh,
another one. The cathedral was rebuilt
oh.
and it's gorgeous. We have the fanciest cathedral now that I've seen
To
in a
be
while.
fair, I do love about rural Ireland is their churches and their
Yeah,
cathedrals do be popping. They do be lovely.
they do be popping.
they do be. I will give them that. Um, but I want to talk about you and certainly your art in terms of how you got into it, because you mentioned there earlier on it's a niche, I guess, form of expression and art that not many people will be into, certainly. And I'm sure there's definitely a bigger community than I know as yourself who's in the heart of it. But how did you get into spoken word and performing?
Ooh, oh God. It's funny, every time somebody asks me this, I always like pick different parts of my experience
Mm.
to actually relay as a story. So if you're listening and you've heard a different answer, mind your business. Um, but mainly how I got into it. Um, After slamming, so I got it from Minute University. My friends found out about me writing poetry and they shoved me into a competition. I did some slam competitions. The first one, I was so nervous that I think um, one of the judges was my English lecturer, and
Mm.
God bless him, so sweet. I remember him just being like, you get an honorary fourth. There was no fourth place, so he just knew he felt so bad for me. He was like, oh, you would get a shiny medal.
Here you go for trying.
For doing your best. So he kind of like encouraged me because he was like your words are great. Your delivery is wow. And it's funny because now a lot of my art is really heavily reliant on my delivery. But yeah, when I started out, like I'm going to take this moment to be inspirational. When I started out, I was shaky knees, shaky hands, paper in hand, like just flapping in the wind, shaky voice, nearly crying, even though I was talking about like, I don't know, socks or something. So I started like that. And the nerves would get you, but just having that, like somebody being like, oh, this is good, will give you that extra sturdy knee the next time you go. So anyway, I did that first one. I got fourth. The second time I went back, I got first. And then I got to represent Maynooth University in intervarsities that Lewis Kenny used to run. Oh my God, if anybody was in the art scene like 2013 to 15, Lewis Kenny was incredible at setting a space where just poets could just slam. And it was quite new of a thing. I didn't realize that the intervarsities was new. I think it
Mm.
was in its third year when I actually joined the slams. And the turnout was crazy. With the intervarsities was in NCAD, and you know how NCAD people are. They think they're like they're the artiest of artists, and it's
Yeah.
just interesting the vibe that they create. So you walk into the space, and these fuckers are doing shit. Fuck off. They're doing nothing. They're just like, oh yeah, we're artists. So anyway, you walk into the space that set up a whole mic, a stage. Everybody was sitting on the floor. This is when, like, obviously, like COVID, COVID, swine flu, like, honestly, we did not care. Everybody's touching their hands on the floor, eating crisps and beers. Like, obviously, we did not care about our health. But anyway, we like packed out this like foyer space in NCAD. Everyone's looking up at each other. And you know the superhero, all the superpower universities were represented. UCD, Trinity was there, and
Yeah.
oh god, it was
The big
so
players. The
the
big
big
players.
the big
Yeah, yeah.
players. NUIG was there. I think we left out. I think Limerick was there as well. It was incredible. But anyway, there was two Maynooth University representatives, and we both won. Like she came first, I came a joint first. We just like swept the whole thing. We were
It's
like,
like, do you know, like bring it all or nothing, and then they
yeah,
go. That's it was like the bring it all of the Irish universities slam poetry. That's what it
yeah.
was.
Basically, like both of us were like, we're such badasses. It felt like such an amazing moment. I was like, oh, I'm in an American high school movie. And they give us little trophies as well. And I think when I realized how big a deal it was
Mm.
when I think it was, I don't know what newspaper it was, but a newspaper person came in with his photographs and his camera, and he started taking pictures of us like, oh, this is a big deal. Like it was something worth reporting. And I was like, whoa, this is insane. This is just words that come out of my brain. Like I'm shocked that you guys give a damn enough to have to take pictures about it. I just didn't understand the culture of artistry in Dublin or in Ireland at that time. Again, from Longford. So I remember I started after that big into varsities, I just started going to little slams, pop into a bar here, look up a poetry slam here, there, or open mics. I loved a good open mic. I would go to all the pubs, all the dingy sections. There's this particular pub on what's it called? What is that? It's near Georgia Street, right? So it's like right behind George's arcade kind of section.
Is that the Stag's Head? No.
No, Georgia Street. That's near DIT. It's near DIT.
Well, now DIT, there's like
Oh
16
yeah, there's like a
million
bajillion.
different.
There's a
Yeah.
bajillion of them.
Everywhere you turn, there's I'm DIT, Granger Street, Georgia Street,
So
every street.
Georgia Street, the Georgia Street that's close to Radisson Blue. Everybody listening would know. So
Okay.
the Georgia Street that's close to Radisson Blue, but instead of going in that direction, go the other direction. So there's a particular pub in that square, and honest to God, I used to go there all the time, and I'd go all the way to the bottom. It just had a really dingy like basement section, but it was always for poetry, and I used to rock that mic, right? I used to have video evidence of rocking that mic. And it really, really helped build my confidence because I didn't know anybody there, nor did anybody there really expect amazing poetry. So whenever people are like, oh, where do you go to practice? I'm like, go to places where nobody cares about the art. and then the whole aim that you're there for is to try and blow their minds. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't go places where, oh, people are typically like super poetry fans.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you would just feel super conscious and you won't stand tall in whatever you're presenting.
You're being
So
comfortable. You're in your comfort zone. Then you're surrounded by
exactly,
people doing the same thing. Whereas when you step out of your comfort zone, that's where you grow the confidence and.
exactly. So I used to go to more open mics that had music setups
Mm-hmm.
instead of poetry setups. And I didn't do it intentionally at the time, but now that I think about it, it was a smart idea because what that exposes you to is a new space of writing, of performing poetry. So generally, again, with the idea of if you can impress an audience that is not typically there for poetry, then you're a good writer. Then you can feel good about your writing because they didn't even know that they would like it. That's amazing. And secondly, doing poetry stand-up poetry in like music gig spaces also meant that you get to learn rhythm differently. So with like an open mic that's specifically for poetry, everybody has really similar rhythm, and even if the rhythm is different to yours, it's not unfamiliar to poetry. So you're just basically absorbing like really similar styles of writing and reading and performing poetry. So you're just taking that in over and over again. Whereas if you're in front of other art forms, you get to like you don't realize how much of a sponge your brain is until you're in these spaces. So if you're in an open mic where everybody is mostly a musician and this guy is going up before you and he's strumming this particular thing, you might pick up his rhythm.
Mm.
You might pick up his rhythm. You might pick up how the string plays. Oh, this might match a section of my piece. And now I'm changing my rhythm to adjust to that because it's a different vibe. So different influences or different musical or artistic influences do wonders for your poetry. It will just take it different. It will just take it in a different place than everybody else. That's just a trick of mine anyway. But how I got really into the poetry world would be after I joined the Word Collective.
On that point where you were talking about, the exposure to I guess different performers and musicians, because you see you've done collaborations with artists, and they're beautiful. I think one, what was it, you were Tushing was, or did I pronounce that right? And Paul, is it Paul Noonan? Is that the, like,
Paul Noonan from Benex.
and they're like beautiful, and it's two art forms collaborating together, and I know what you mean in terms of you can kind of see how they can incorporate, or how they kind of bounce off each other, and where you kind of get influences from, whether it's their lyrics, or whether it's their music, or their beats, I guess.
Absolutely.
I always feel like less when I'm talking to someone who's a performer, because like what I don't know if I'm articulating myself well. Also, I am really bad at English as well, so my articulation is terrible. But in my head, I know what I'm saying, and I'm like, yeah, good one, Podge. But they're beautiful pieces, and it's great when you see those collaborations come together, because they're two kind of not completely polar opposite worlds, but two sort of kind of different arts in the same kind of universe coming together.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The things you can do with it, blending arts, and I really enjoy doing that actually. I'm really enjoying blending poetry with theater, blending poetry with music, with all kinds of
Because
performances.
you've done something for RTE as well, and this is another kind of your Pump Freedom is in Freedom, and there was a piece with that which was in collaboration with Esther, ESTR, the and that's another, like, a completely different art form, and it was incredible, because that visual piece was really, really powerful and amazing.
Yeah, she's amazing. She drew or painted a mural for Black Lives Matter, and they wanted a poetic response. And I already had a piece, and I did it. But what was really interesting about that piece is that it didn't resonate with a lot of people.
Did it not?
Yeah, I felt like it made people uncomfortable, and that was probably the first time I started getting internet warriors
Mm.
being angry at me, racist trolls on the internet. It was after that freedom piece. They were just kind of like, "Who are you? Like, who is this person, and how dare you speak?" Yeah, after that piece, and I really liked that piece, but I felt like another thing that I've been learning is the types of pieces that can be quite mainstream in terms of its digestibility, versus the kind of pieces that is more about an artist kind of piece. Do you get what I mean? So there's pieces that a typical audience or a regular audience member would absolutely ravage, whereas
Yeah.
there's some pieces that artists write for other artists.
So like still, that would probably be one of the, because everyone can digest that, can relate
Yeah,
to that. And then, like, is it How About Us? And then that the freedom piece, where it's a conversational piece. It's something that is
yeah,
very meaningful to you, but it can spark, I guess, hate, but at the same time, it could spark a conversation too, in a powerful and positive way.
absolutely. I think poems that don't seek to be understood but seek to say something, specifically, can be quite unnerving, both in a good and a bad way. And that's
Mm.
probably why I got a lot more visceral reaction to freedom. And I've gotten a lot more specifically positive reactions to freedom too, just not a lot of a reaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Because it's not a for everybody piece, where still it's mostly great positive reactions because everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. They
yeah.
feel like all the words resonate to each person if you're a human being, you could possibly understand at least one line feels like it's yours. Whereas freedom could exclude a whole host of people. And you have to be more interested in the intellectualizing the piece than anything else to appreciate it. So yeah, just learning all those things. It's like learning that as part of the art form is part of the world that other people don't typically understand about poetry. So until this conversation comes up, there probably wouldn't have been a way for me to express what I've just explained to you as poets.
Do you have a preferred piece? Like, do you prefer writing those kind of the I guess for everyone audience, or do you have a preferred piece of writing, or is it kind of different how you're feeling? Or
Generally, I don't have a preferred piece. I think as long as it's a clear idea and it's a topic I care about, I will knock it out of the park. So whether I'm writing it for everybody or for myself or specific niche of people, as long as I care about it, I think I'll do a good job about it. But I'd say the pieces I like to write the most, or that I often get drawn to writing the most, I think are pieces that are either encouraging or highlighting something. So it's either that I'm drawing people out, like dragged by the neck, look at what y'all did, or I'm gathering people with love. And I think those are usually the biggest themes, overarching themes in my pieces. Either I'm comforting with love or I'm dragging everybody.
And just on that, because I'm going to play a piece of yours now, and it's on mending lovers. That's the name of the piece, isn't it? And it's about having a partner who is going through mental illness and being there for them from the perspective of the partner, and it's absolutely beautiful. So we're going to play that now for everyone to listen to.
This poem is called On Mending Lovers You Didn't Break. And I wrote it based on loving a partner through a mental health struggle. So from the perspective of the lover that is Carrie. So here goes. 1. In the moment he tells you a disturbing secret, rocking back and forth in the comfort of your laps, his crown on your chest in an interlock embrace. Let him become an orphan in your bosom, that's where he was first dropped. 2. Breathe love into his beginning, and if there is no beginning and no start, emptiness looming in the place where cradles become crawls, wrap your arms around that space tightly. Mother it into existence. 3. Carry him in all the ways his father didn't. Swing him between the broad of your back so he knows what support feels like. Don't hesitate to teach him how a woman like you should be loved. Kneel before the boy in him. Find the center in his pupils and smile. Hold his clumsy fingers and give him the basics. I like flowers. 4. When he has days where his mind both pleases and tortures him, hold his head in your hands and kiss it. Quote all his favorite rap lyrics and sing this precious man to sleep. Lullaby after lullaby, don't let a thought escape him, just be so present. They silence. 5. When happiness blurs into sadness and both consume the treasure you own, slow dance. Help him live out both with you around his limbs and a resting place in the crook of your neck. When the song finds an end, lead another dance all the way to happy thoughts. 1 step, 2 step, 3. 6. On days when he can't seem to stop talking and all his insides are aiming to exist outside his body, spend the whole day listening. Give him your ears and let him speak. Understand that all the noise within him needs to be assigned a tongue. Don't sew his lips with glares like the rest did. 7. Lastly, if your lover doesn't want to exist at all, pray in the language of tears, summon all the gods you've heard of from the bottom of your stomach and wail. And when you are finished, walk with him to cliff's edge and watch him jump and trust that love has taught him how to fly.
Beautiful. But I actually on that, because that was a really, really beautiful piece. And I think, certainly personally, I was definitely moments of, I was able to resonate with it quite on a personal level for a lot of it. But I want to ask what the purpose of the numbering was. So, 1, 2, and what was that for in the piece?
So this piece is actually super personal to me, but I'm the kind of person that I'm quite anxious. And nobody believes me because of how confident I appear, especially on stage. I'm a very anxious person. And so one of the things for anxiety, especially if your partner is going through a mental health struggle, is you trying to calm yourself down. And so the piece was, even though it was for him, or for the person, about the person, it was mainly for people like me who are the lover of the person in a mental health struggle.
Mm.
And the numbering is basically a counting down of, like, a breathing counting down thing. Especially when you're having like an anxiety attack or you're having an anxious moment, you just count backwards or forwards, in numbers. And so I kind of wrote it as okay, 1, okay, this first stanza is gonna calm you down in number 1. Number 2, this is what number 2 is gonna calm you down with. Number 3. So by the time you get to 10 and you have that release, you have exhaled all the way through by the end of the piece.
Okay, because it's funny, and this is why, I guess, for me, I thought they were I perceived them as steps. To each one of his steps, and I think, and is that something that you enjoy when people like view your poetry and might take it? I guess it was very obvious what the overarching theme was, but people can take other things from it and
Yes,
think of them
that
as something
happens.
different.
That happens so often. Like, people, they will pick up something in my piece, and I'm like, I didn't say that, but
But
I
good.
see that. I like that. One of those was, you mentioned it earlier in my piece, How About Us?
Mm.
So How About Us has this, obviously you probably don't remember it word for word, but like if you've ever heard it before, it has this line: for hooded sisters, for cloaked women.
Yeah.
And so I read it to somebody at a kind of like a lounge, hang out with friends, artists kind of thing ages ago in Dublin City. And this person was reading it and they were like, "Oh, were you talking about the nuns?" And I was like, "God damn it, that is amazing." I was like, that is amazing, because I wasn't talking about the nuns. When I was talking about cloaked women, I was talking about hooded women. I was talking about religious women that cover themselves off,
That's
cover.
but funny because that's kind of what I perceived it as well. Certainly because following that then is again, I do not know word for word, but talking about the children being given up and being taken
Yeah,
away, and that's where I perceived it as well.
which is really interesting. So it's like in the same poem, even though I didn't intend to say it, ultimately I am saying it. And I think that's the power of the subconscious as well, because when I was writing about those women, I was writing about, like, maybe Israeli women or Middle Eastern women and some of the cultural abuses they will have gone through, as well as, like, Muslim women in Nigeria, as well as like other kinds of women that would have been scarfed.
Mm.
I wasn't initially ever thinking about nuns at all, but the history of Ireland, like,
That's it.
and being a Black Irish person, even though it wasn't specifically my intentionality, you can't separate that subconscious knowledge from the piece.
Yeah.
And like, once I saw it, once it was pointed out to me, I couldn't stop seeing it. I was like, oh my God.
But that's beautiful as well, though, isn't it? Like that's what the effect of your art and the effect of what you do, and anyone and like in songwriting or whatever it might be, has that ability to draw those, whether it's personal experiences or knowledge from someone else, to, I guess, apply it to something different than what you originally intended to do. But then it's but it still has definitely the same meaning, or is part of the kind of same, as you said, overarching piece of what How About Us kind of really stands for.
Yeah.
Because one of my, I think, going through some of your archive, I think one of my favorite poems for you was for mothers, and I think it was just the last line, which is, I wrote this one down because I didn't want to mess this up. Find a love that will heal her thoughts, her smile, find love that'll heal her through her smile, For mama's sake, find a love she never had. And I think that's beautiful as well. And then that's another thing that, like, what the poem is initially about, I don't have experience about in terms of, I'm not a mother. I am a white male from Offaly, but I think, we can definitely draw experiences of, smiling through something difficult, smiling through
Yeah.
pain and finding that. I think that is beautiful, certainly in the terms of art of what you do. Do you prefer, because that piece I had, I think it was an audio file, so it wasn't a spoken word, it wasn't visuals. Do you prefer people watching, the performance, or listening, or even just reading it? Because, all three of those can draw completely different experiences for people.
To tell you the truth, so I'm one of those people that I love having control over how my art is disseminated. And my favorite way to disseminate my art is come and see me so I can be on stage. That's like, if I don't release it any other way and I only am ever on stage, that would be perfection to me. So basically, I think it's always quite a symbiotic interaction with the audience, because I could do For Our Mothers in front of you and it's a completely different vibe, versus doing it in the Sugar Club with 12 people versus Workman's Club with 50. Like, I'm receiving the energy, and how I deliver it is based on what I'm drawing from you, or I have to draw from myself. But generally, I'm just kind of like, I just prefer if people receive my art with my body on stage.
Yeah.
And even way more than videos. Like, I'd rather you just, if you can't see me on stage, I'd rather you actually just listened to me rather than watched my face in a video. There's something about I think this is probably an everybody issue, but there's just something about watching yourself.
Oh yeah, completely.
It's just so awkward. I'm like, oh good God. Like, did you hear how I said that? Look at how my mouth moved.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, is like, I'm so expressive with my face and my hands and all that, that like I wouldn't be listening to the poem. I'm like, why did my mouth curl like that? Like,
What are you doing? Stop.
yeah, and like next minute I'm like turning and asking my friends or my partner, like, so you know my lips do this, and you never said it. You knew
This is your
it.
fault. This is your fault.
You could have helped me. But generally I prefer if you just see me in person, just because my lips will do all those things on stage too, but you don't remember it. You can't rewind. You
And
can't.
again, it's that experience. You're part of the aura that's in the room, and everyone knows, if you've been to a concert, if you've been to a soccer match, if you've been to a family sing song, like, there's just something about being there that makes everything so. And as Irish people, we really draw and care about the experience and the togetherness and being caught in the moment, so it makes it all that much more beautiful.
Absolutely. Being in that space. This is why I can't wait for them to release this. It would be like one of those release the Kraken like moments. It would be absolutely lunacy, because as soon as they let us out and they've jabbed everybody or whoever they're jabbing, oh my
Job, everyone. Bam, bam.
that's a whole different conversation. Like, the vaccine conversation is hilarious. I'm not going to get into it.
Oh yeah.
As soon as they've jabbed everybody that they're going to jab, blah, 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 like, and they give us the green light to start having concerts and shows, I know for a fact artists are going to rule Ireland for about a year.
Yeah.
Because there's so many artists that's just sitting on like gold. Like, you've had enough time with yourself for about a year to go through depression, get out of depression, get some help, get creative, get back into depression. We're ready. We are so ready. As soon as they let us out, it's go time. And I'm really excited about the kind of work that will be released and what people have been working on and creating and working with, and what the year holds. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and look, I agree with you, and I hope, not that I would disagree at all, but we're sitting in, and I'd love to see a new explosion of culture in Ireland, because there was a time there as well where it was, I felt that people in your industry were they were definitely struggling with the likes of the hotels being built and the culture, certainly in the city of Dublin, being completely demolished. But we're hoping that after this, you see that, like you talk about there, the I guess the build of just excitement and eagerness to go out and perform. So you can't wait to see when people can perform. For someone like myself, who's just a viewer, what that's going to look like from people like you in the industry.
It's gonna be crazy.
Before we go, I one actually question. I want two more questions before we go, but I wanted to quickly ask you how, because I saw on your Instagram last week you were talking about trying to be more vulnerable on your Instagram, or the personality you are, which is for a lot of people probably found surprising to see, because your art and your performance, they're so so powerful, and they're so emotional, and they, it's the pen to paper and how you perform it is incredible. But to say that online you find that difficult, how you find it, what made you think that as well? Because as I said, like, from someone looking at that, they probably thought this girl is so authentic and so able to express her emotions, but you kind of said when you're online it's the opposite.
Yeah, I'm really good at compartmentalizing, and one of my values is about being genuine and authenticity, but it's also to protect myself. I don't show all of who I am. Not that anybody deserves it or needs it, but I can feel myself holding back, and that was the problem with me. So I was just kind of like, oh no, I'm doing a thing. And one thing that I do thoroughly enjoy doing in general with myself is constantly trying to find things to improve, to play with and tinker with. And I enjoy, like, critically analyzing and tearing apart concepts and thoughts and all of that. So one of the things that I've been playing around with a lot is vulnerability, and I pride myself in being quite a vulnerable person that doesn't enjoy looking vulnerable. It is exhausting when you're a vulnerable person that doesn't like looking vulnerable.
Yeah.
And with poetry, it's easy to package my vulnerability. I can package it in 3 minutes, explain it beforehand, smile, and be done.
That's that Irish. Oh, I'm grand. And like, because you have that expression, you have that ability to really, encapsulate your emotions or bring them out. But then afterwards, no, I'm grand. Just
literally,
grand.
I could have just said a whole poem about death, and then next day I'm like, so who wants some ice cream? Like,
from the best Tesco, and we'll go to the best Tesco in Longford. No, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, yeah, and I realized that with coming online, and especially dedicating my Instagram page to work, a lot of it is like work related. And I realized that, you know what, I am not starting another Instagram page to be more personal on. It's just not going to happen. So this is the page where I'm going to have to find a way of being both personal and professional, quite comfortably. And the only way I've found how to do that is by dancing. So sometimes I'll just dance online. I'm like, bye. And so that's the expression. But I know that I'm really the kind of person that I have so much to say. Like, if you've ever met me, if anybody listening has ever met me in person, I talk a lot. If I get excited, I'm going to talk for hours. I'm going to tell you all my business, stuff like that. But I was like, you know what? I need to get better at being comfortably visible online. In Felicia, because most of the time, Felispeaks has already said the poem. You can click in and out of it, but the other expressions are Felicia, and I'm so uncomfortable with people seeing Felicia. So that Instagram story was just to kind of face it head on and tell the truth about how I felt, and not pretend that I'm comfortable with Instagramming, just because, like, I'm so hypercritical. I'll be like, okay.
It's easy to do as well, isn't it, online? And it's easy to kind of get caught up in that, and then that vulnerability and that kind of insecurity as well, because it's hard to portray. I know I've taken videos multiple times and just redone them, and there's no purpose, because I know the people watching that are going to get the exact same experience than the first video that I thought was horrendous to the video that I actually put up. It doesn't, but it's difficult to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And the thing is, most people know exactly what I mean in terms of, like, separating your personal and your professional, but until, like, you say it like that on Instagram, because a lot of my professional work goes on Instagram. So it's like, why are you scared of Instagram? What's going on? I'm like, no, people hear my thoughts. Oh my god, and it's not like in a pretty lace of a poem.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a completely different experience, and I think poetry has really taught me and pushed me to use my voice properly. But now I'm trying to learn how to use my voice outside of poetry, and it's terrifying. Um, and now that's I'm having a super vulnerable moment with you right now, because I don't think I've really admitted it to a lot of people that like writing poetry is empowering. Like it's Felispeaks, and I get to get my face out there, but also my voice most of all.
Mm.
But then when Felispeaks is not on stage, I'm like, I'm
Felicia's
shy.
like, oh,
Oh, I just want to hide.
Felicia's like, come back at 8. Felispeaks will be back on stage then. But right now, no.
Exactly. Or like I remember I was talking to somebody, a fellow artist, and they said they remember the first time they saw me perform, and they said that it was at Vicker Street for This Is Pop Baby. So I was one of the guest performers. So I did How About Us there. And they were like, oh, you know, when you got up on stage, you were like, hi, my name is Felicia, and my poem is this, and I hope you like it. And everybody was kind of a bit like, oh, who's this young one? Like, oh, bless her heart. And then as soon as I started saying the poem, everybody was like, what the heck?
It's such a powerful poem. Like, it's such a powerful poem. You wouldn't expect that. You wouldn't expect the, you know, the timidness to come on stage and then perform that. It would have been even funnier if you performed the poem and then finished off. It's like, you know, when like you see you have someone who's, oh, I'm just thinking like I think Grown Ups or a random film, but like there's a guy and he's so buff and he's incredible and he's like absolutely like glistening muscle, and he comes up and he's the highest pitch voice. It's,
oh my God, you know what? It's kind of like The Rock.
Yeah.
It's like The Rock having like really tiny, shy voice. You just be like,
hey there, guys.
Pointed fingers.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically. So like a lot of people were like, Felicia, you just like it doesn't match. Like your voice in the intro versus when you do the poem. Like, who is that? And realizing that like the timid voice is Felicia, and I'm trying to get Felicia's voice to be as strong as Felispeaks' voice. And that's why I was expressing that on Instagram that day.
Well, I certainly enjoyed chatting to Felicia today and sharing that vulnerable moment. And for people who maybe wouldn't have heard of you before or want to hear more of your art, where would you direct them to first? Where?
So a great way to find me is just the fact that my name is the same everywhere totally helps. So www.felispeaks.com. So generally I have all my updates there. Whenever I've done a big gig or pictures and things like that, they usually go up there. And whatever you can find on my Instagram, which is also at Felispeaks, you can find on my website. So website and my Instagram would be the go-to. Don't follow me on Twitter if you're following me for my work.
What was that? That was such the expression was changed completely.
Yeah, exactly, because I meant it. Like did you hear my voice crack?
Yeah, that was like a different person.
Like, don't follow me on Twitter. Like, if you like my work, don't follow me on Twitter, because I'm on Twitter to faff around and to mess. And I'm giving this disclaimer because, like, honestly, during the past year or so, the more work I've done, especially after Still happened.
Yeah.
Oh my God, every producer, every dad, every like TV station mom, fucking hell, decided to follow me on Twitter. I'm like, dude, like, no, this is not what this is for.
Wrong place.
Exactly. Twitter is for like all your stupid thoughts. Are you trying to get me out of here?
Yeah. Twitter's a weird place in general. I'm not a big Twitter user. I'm starting to get into it more, but like it's a completely, there's such parallel universes in Twitter where like one side could be so toxic, another side could be so powerful and amazing, and then another side is just like the randomest people in the world that you don't even know how or they got there. It's just Twitter's a mad one.
Twitter's a madhouse, and I just just come to my Twitter if you just like chatting, if you like my personality. Don't expect professionalism. I hate that shit. I just want to be able to cuss on Twitter without feeling like, you know, the next person that can offer me a job is watching.
Yeah. It's a curse. I always say curse. It is cuss, isn't it? It's CUS.
Oh, it's CURSE, curse.
I don't know. Listen. I'm dyslexic, so we're not going to get into that. But Felicia, thank you very much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. Hopefully, we will see you soon. As you mentioned there, Felispeaks.com or your Instagram, not Twitter. I repeat, not Twitter. And yes, if you want to get in touch, Podge the Podcast, got your Podge Henry on all social channels. Thank you very much for joining me this week. And until next week, stay safe.